Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Archana Solanki. Here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. Sensex and Nifty end in the green after a steady session. Nifty moves back above 26,000 and is now 160 points away from the record closing high. Market regulator SEBI recommends lowering the brokerage charges imposed by mutual fund houses, also tweaks rules dictating fund management fees. Asset management companies and broking stocks suffer sharp cuts in trade. US President Donald Trump praises Prime Minister Modi, says he's doing a trade deal with India, also reiterates his disputed claim of personally averting a nuclear war between India and Pakistan. President Trump says they have reached a trade deal with South Korea as he addresses the APEC summit in Seoul. Also expects a good deal with China ahead of his summit with President Xi Jinping tomorrow. China issues rare earth import licenses to Indian companies for the first time since the export controls took effect in April. This year, Continental India, Hitachi and J. Ashin received licenses. However, conditions apply. These entities cannot export the imported magnets to the United States or use them for defense purposes. Indian government considers a $12 billion bailout plan to revive debt-ridden state power distribution companies. States will be required to privatize and transfer managerial control to strategic partner. If states choose to keep control, they need to be listed on a stock exchange. Days after allowing the centre to reconsider Vodafone Idea's AGR dues, the Supreme Court upholds its judgment. The order pertains only to Vodafone Idea due to peculiar facts and circumstances. Also highlights the plea restricts its claim only to the additional AGR demand raised by the government, which is 9,400 crore rupees. The proposed demerger of mining conglomerate Vedanta faces a fresh delay. A bench of the company law tribunal, which was hearing the case, has been reconstituted. The new bench will hear the arguments once again from the 12th of November. Infra-major L&T misses estimates in Q2 even as revenues grow over 10%. Management remains upbeat on exceeding the order inflow outlook for the full year as inflow rises 39% in the first half of the year. Boeing turns cash positive for the first time in 2 years, but books a charge of nearly $5 billion for delay of its long-awaited wide-body planes. Nvidia becomes the first company to hit $5 trillion in market capitalization. Shares rally after CEO Jensen Huang expects semiconductor orders worth $500 billion. Israel claims to have resumed enforcing the ceasefire after killing over 100 people across Gaza. President Trump defends Israel's actions and claims nothing will jeopardize the ceasefire now. Cyclonic storm Montha weakens after making landfall in Andhra Pradesh. Death toll rises to 2. Heavy rains lash parts of Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Bengal, Jharkhand and Madhya Pradesh. All right, let's start with the day's market action. The Wall Street ended higher with Nifty closing above the 26,000 mark. Mid-cap index hit a one-year high. Nifty metal surged 2%, gaining for 6 straight sessions. A day after MCX exchange went offline for more than 4 hours, the exchange confirmed that all trading activities have resumed and all operations are functioning normally today. Now, MCX noted that the delay in operations was caused by an issue pertaining to data processing at the trading gateway. The exchange also said that corrective measures have been taken to address the issue. The US Federal Reserve's two-day policy meeting will kickstart tonight. A CNBC survey has found that markets are expecting a 25 basis points rate cut, even as inflation remains well above the Fed's target. The respondents also expect the Fed to lower rates by 100 basis points by the end of 2026. However, top economists raise concerns about factors like lack of data on the impact of the government shutdown. Remember, the Fed cut rates by 25 basis points during the September meeting as well. President Trump has been pressurizing Fed Chair Jerome Powell to lower rates since he took office in January. You can catch our coverage of the Fed rate decision from 11 p.m. onwards right here on CNBC-TV18. Stocks of AMCs and other market participants declined after SEBI proposed norms which would reduce mutual fund expense ratios and brokerage fee. Sonal Bhutra has more.
SEBI has proposed a sweeping overhaul of how mutual funds charge investors, aiming to make the system more transparent, fair, and performance-driven. The proposal, if implemented, could lower costs for investors, but also squeeze profits for fund houses and brokers. To begin with, SEBI has proposed reducing the total expense ratio, or TER, charged by mutual funds. For open-ended schemes, the cut could be up to 15 basis points, and for close-ended schemes, as much as 25 basis points. In simple terms, that's the portion of your investment that goes towards the fund's management and operational costs. Currently, equity-oriented schemes can charge up to 1.25%, but under the new proposal, that will be capped at 1%. For debt and hybrid funds or schemes that are not equity-oriented, the ceiling will fall from 1% to 0.8%. SEBI has also proposed removing the additional 5 basis points charge that mutual funds were allowed to levy on their entire assets under management. That extra charge was introduced in 2018 as a transitional allowance, and now SEBI feels it's time to rationalize investor costs. SEBI has also proposed that fund houses venturing into non-mutual fund businesses such as portfolio management or advisory must do so through separate business units. This ensures that costs are not cross-subsidized and that investor money in mutual fund is used strictly for that purpose. In addition, statutory levies like STT, GST and stamp duty, they will remain outside the expense ratio. This means these taxes will be shown separately, allowing investors to see the real cost of fund management versus regulatory levies. Now to one of the most interesting proposals, performance-linked expenses. Under this framework, mutual funds may be allowed to charge a higher or lower TER depending on how the scheme performs. If the fund outperforms its benchmark, the AMC could earn a slightly higher fee, but if it underperforms, the expenses charged would reduce. The idea is to align the fund manager's incentives with investor outcomes so they earn more only when you, the investor, does well. A detailed framework for this will be developed after consultations with the industry. This also marks a shift from SEBI's 2023 approach, when the regulator had proposed including all such charges within the total expenses, an approach that was met with significant pushback from the industry. While these proposals are investor-friendly, they may tighten profitability for asset management companies. According to estimates by Jefferies, a 5 basis point reduction in equity-related charges could impact AMC profits by 8 to 10% if the new rules take effect from FY27. The cut in brokerage fees could also hurt institutional brokers who might see lower revenue from mutual fund transactions. However, for investors, this could be a positive development with fewer hidden costs, lower expenses, and more transparency in how their money is managed. Comments are invited from the industry, and the deadline is 17th of November.
Right. Thank you, Sonal, for that. Shifting focus now, Indian government is considering a $12 billion bailout plan to revive debt-ridden state power distribution companies. States will be required to privatize and transfer managerial control to a strategic partner. If states choose to keep control, they need to be listed on a stock exchange. Vivek Iyer is here with more details.
Well, in what is a very important material development as far as India's power sector is concerned, CNBC-TV18 has accessed an important document, a presentation that is being under active consideration by the Ministry of Power. Now, this particular presentation has put out and has given various suggestions in order to go ahead and improve the health of ailing discoms. What are the options that are being actively considered? First up, they are talking about privatization of discoms. Remember, earlier this year, CNBC-TV18 had told you about how in the state of Uttar Pradesh, you could see privatization come about in a few circles. So this step appears to be a step in that particular direction. Along with that, in case the debts are currently unsustainable, they are also talking about part divestment of stake as far as state discoms are concerned. In case that doesn't fructify, they are also talking about going ahead and listing discoms on equity market exchanges. So these are very significant developments that have been talked about in order to go ahead and aid the ailing discoms. When you're talking about the discoms, remember, there are burgeoning dues that these discoms actually have to go ahead and pay regularly and finance their debt to companies like REC, which is Rural Electrification Corporation, Power Finance Corporation, the companies that actually lend to various power projects across the country. Along with that, there are a few other steps also being taken. Number one, they're talking about making tariffs cost effective. They're also talking about eliminating banking for open access, given the fact that this reduces the scope of operations as far as REC and PFT are concerned. Who does this benefit and who stands to benefit? Number one, any improvement in the health of discoms improves India's power sector. So the entire power sector and all of the utilities stand to gain, especially companies that have active discoms and have active circles. So players like Tata Power, players like Torrent Power, players like CSE in East India, companies stand to benefit. Of course, an REC, a PSC, and even an IREDA that do active lending to power projects across the country will definitely gain. This is an important development, but we need to understand that this is still a draft proposal, and there are a lot of steps that need to be taken before this fructifies finally.
Right, the top international story we are tracking. US President Donald Trump praised Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi while speaking at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting in South Korea. He called Modi the nicest looking guy and described him as quote-unquote killer. Trump also hinted at finalizing a trade deal with India soon. He, however, reiterated his claim of stopping a potential war between India and Pakistan. Trump is also scheduled to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping tomorrow. This would be the first face-to-face conversation between the two leaders since Trump returned to the White House for his second U.S. presidency.
The chief of China is coming tomorrow here, and we're going to be, I hope, making a deal. I think we're going to have a deal. I think it'll be a good deal for both. And that's really a great result. You know, that's better than fighting and going through all sorts of problems and, you know, no reason for it. I think it's going to be a great deal for both. And I called Prime Minister Modi. I said, we can't make a trade deal with you. No, we must make a trade deal. I said, no, we can't. You're starting a war with Pakistan. We're not going to do it. And then I called Pakistan. I said, we're not going to do trade with you because you're fighting with India. Prime Minister Modi is the nicest looking guy. He says, oh, and he looks like you'd like to have your father, like, he's a killer. He's tough as hell. No, we will fight. I said, whoa, this is the same man that I know. But after a little while, and they're good people, and after literally 2 days, they called up and they said, we understand, and they stopped fighting. How is that? Isn't that amazing?
Well, that is President Trump for you. Shifting focus now, China has issued the first set of rare earths import licenses to Indian companies after imposing export restrictions. Parikshit Luthra joins us now with more. Parikshit, what are your sources telling you?
Well, this is a very important piece of news coming in. Industry sources telling us that for the first time since the 1st of April, when China imposed export curbs on export of rare earth magnets, high rare earth magnets all across the world, and India was one of the countries which was worst affected. There were other nations and other companies for whom China was releasing rare earth consignments on a case-by-case basis, but not for India. Now we have learned, after months of diplomatic back-channel talks, China has issued licenses to 3 Indian entities. One is J. Ushin, which is a JP Minda Group company making lock sets and also key knobs, heat control switches for automobiles. Then you've got Continental Automotive, which makes telematics and gadgets for autonomous vehicle technology and connectivity as well. You also have Hitachi Automotive, which makes valve timing components. So these companies, these 3, have received licenses to import high rare earth magnets into India. At what pace do they get magnets? That remains to be seen. But the fact that they have been granted the license is indeed very important itself. There were at least 20 to 25 Indian entities which had applied for licenses since April this year. So things seem to be moving in the right direction. Let's see how the larger automotive ecosystem benefits in the days to come. But these 3 companies are large suppliers for OEMs like Maruti Suzuki, and they supply to a bulk of OEMs in the country.
All right. Thank you, Parikshit, for that update. Shifting focus now. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has said that India and the European Union have agreed close to 10 out of 20 chapters of the free trade agreement. Addressing a press conference, he added that when the EU Trade Commissioner visits next month, both nations will be able to make significant progress towards closure of the deal.
First, we have made significant progress in this 3-day discussion between EU Trade Commissioner Maroš Sefcovic and his team and our team. We have agreed to close 10 out of 20 chapters. Another 4 or 5 chapters have in principle been broadly decided.
All right, let's talk about the earnings now. Larsen & Toubro's second quarter performance fell short of expectations. Revenue grew 10%, missing estimates, while net profit, which also grew 16%, was lower than expected. Only margins, which stood at 10%, were in line with estimates, while orders grew 39% year-on-year. The demerger of Vedanta will be delayed as the NCLT bench hearing the case has now been reconstituted. This new bench will now hear Vedanta's plea and the government's objections to the demerger scheme of arrangement all over again. The NCLT will begin hearing the case once again on the 12th of November. This comes as SEBI clarified that it was not happy with Vedanta's modification of the scheme of merger after approval. Days after allowing the centre to reconsider Vodafone Idea's AGR dues, the Supreme Court has uploaded its judgment on the matter. The court's written order specifies that the plea restricts its claim only to the additional AGR demand raised by the government, which is 9,400 crore rupees. Ashmit Kumar has more. Ashmit, please take us through the specifics of the court's judgment.
Well, in fact, when the day began, we reached out to the telecom minister, the telecom secretary. The indication they gave us is that they'll wait for the fine print from the apex court. But the Supreme Court order, it seems, has raised more questions than answers. Number one, the petition that was originally filed by Vodafone Idea, it had challenged the additional AGR demand, and it had also sought for a reassessment of all the AGR dues, citing computational errors, arithmetic errors. Subsequent to that, Vodafone Idea had filed another application where they were seeking a total waiver of the entire of the penalty interest and the interest on penalty dues. What's important is that the Supreme Court order at the very outset records makes no mention of the waiver of penalty interest and the interest on penalty component, but says that the only prayer that has been sought by Vodafone Idea is as far as a reassessment of the overall AGR dues and a challenge to the additional AGR dues. Then, as the order progresses, it then goes on to say that the only thing that Vodafone Idea is seeking is a challenge to the additional AGR dues. Now, that figure, when compared to the overall gargantuan AGR figure, is minute. That figure that we're talking about, the additional AGR figure, is about 9,400 crore rupees, which again pales in comparison to the overall AGR demand that confronts Vodafone Idea. This order, from the language that has been adopted, raises questions whether the hands of the DoT have been untied only and only to address the issue of additional AGR dues. The question that also arises is, can the DoT then move ahead above and beyond the additional AGR dues to address the larger AGR facet, the AGR figure that is facing Vodafone Idea in the face? That's not all. This written order that was uploaded only a short while back also says that this order has been passed in specific regard to Vodafone Idea, makes a specific mention of the company, says they are in a unique position. The government holds 49% stake. They have 20 crore customers. So again, that begs the question, can this relief, if at all, that the DoT can contemplate, can that also feature in a broader sector-wide approach? Will it be confined only to Vodafone Idea, or can AGR relief also be granted to Bharti Airtel? Important questions that the DoT will now have to understand, will now have to respond to with this clarity coming in from the apex court.
Right. Thank you, Ashmit, for that. Moving now, Amazon Web Services will invest $5 billion to build AI data centers in South Korea by 2031. This will be the country's largest foreign investment and will overtake the previous record set by Amazon in June when it pledged $4 billion for another AI data center. Nvidia has become the first company to hit $5 trillion in market capitalization. Shares rallied after CEO Jensen Huang said he expects semiconductor orders worth $500 billion. And speaking of Nvidia, the company is investing $1 billion to buy 2.9% stake in Nokia as part of a strategic push to bring AI to telecom networks. Nokia will also integrate Nvidia's AI chips into its 5G and upcoming 6G network to boost automation. The chip maker will leverage Nokia's networking and data center technology for its AI infra. Coming up on India Business Hour, Hindustan Aeronautics has signed an MOU with Russia's UAC to manufacture the SJ-100 passenger jet in India. The Russian firm had been sanctioned by the United States in 2022. More details in a bit. And you can also catch all CNBC-TV18 news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. Do subscribe to CNBC-TV18 Access for exclusive stories and special shows like The Editor's Playbook and many others. You're watching India Business Hour. The benchmark Nifty 50 is now just about 160 points away from its record closing high of 26,216, which it touched on September 26 last year. Now, after hitting a low of 22,083 in March this year, the index has rallied nearly 4,000 points, gaining 18%. Three stocks are responsible for a lion's share of the gains. Yusuf is here with a deep dive.
That is right. Three heavyweights like HDFC Bank, Reliance Industries and Bharti Airtel have together contributed nearly one-third of 4,000-point rally on the Nifty in the last 7 months. The trio commanded combined 26% weight in the index, led by HDFC Bank at 13%, followed by Reliance Industries at 8.6%. Among Nifty 50 members, shares of Bharat Electronics have rallied the most with a 54% gain, followed by Jio Financial Services at 50%. Other outperformers include Eternal, Eicher Motors and SBI Life Insurance, each rising between 41% and 45%. Interestingly, the rally has unfolded without any support from the IT sector, which remains the biggest drag. Wipro and TCS have fallen over 13%, while Infosys is down nearly 11% since March this year. Adding to the momentum, foreign portfolio investors have turned net buyers in recent weeks. Exchange data shows FPIs have purchased $1.2 billion worth of shares yesterday, their second biggest single-day buying of 2025. For October so far, FPI inflows have topped $2.5 billion, compared with $9.3 billion of outflows in the September quarter. Even future position hints at improving sentiment. FPI's short position in NSE index futures have narrowed to 80% from 93% at the start of October. With momentum building and sentiment improving, Nifty could well reach its previous record highs in the coming days.
All right, let's talk about the big earnings of the day. Boeing has flown into the cash-positive territory for the first time in nearly 2 years. The company credited a surge in jetliner deliveries for a 30% rise in revenue, which surpassed expectations. However, the company took a charge of $5 billion on additional delays of its 777X wide-body plane. Remember, Boeing is on track to deliver the most number of aircraft this year since 2018. Israel has claimed to have resumed enforcing the 3-week-old ceasefire after killing over 100 people across Gaza. The strikes followed accusations from Israel's military that Hamas attacked its forces in the area. President Donald Trump defended Israel's actions, saying that nothing will jeopardize the ceasefire now. Hurricane Melissa has made landfall in Cuba as a Category 3 hurricane after leaving a trail of destruction in Jamaica. Hundreds of thousands of people had been evacuated to shelters in Cuba. The storm has weakened after hitting Jamaica as a Category 5 hurricane. Jamaica's Prime Minister has warned of devastating impact as officials assess the damage. The hurricane will move northeast towards the Bahamas and Bermuda after hitting Cuba. Hindustan Aeronautics has signed an MOU with Russia's UAC to produce the SJ-100 passenger jet in India. The Russian aerospace firm has been sanctioned. It was in fact sanctioned by the US in 2022. The arrangement gives HAL the rights to manufacture the aircraft for domestic customers. Madiha Mujawar is here with more on this aircraft.
Well, the SJ100, originally marketed as the Sukhoi Superjet 100, is a twin-engine, single-aisle regional jet, smaller than the narrow-body Airbus and Boeing planes that we travel in. It typically seats about 87 to 98 passengers, and in denser layouts can carry up to 100 passengers as well. It first flew in May 2008 and entered commercial service in the early 2010s. SJ100 never became a global bestseller. Estimates vary, but roughly 125 aircraft, only 125 aircraft have been in service as of today, with the total production reported at a little over 200 planes, just 200 planes. Today, the most active operators are only Russian carriers. According to available fleet data, Rossiya is the largest operator with 61 planes in service and 14 grounded. Red Wings flies 19 SJ100s, Azimuth has 18, Yamal Airlines around 10, IR Aero around 6 SJ100s, and Gazprom Mavia Airlines has 5 SJ100s, and Yakutia has 2. Several of these planes bought by these airlines are also grounded for different reasons. Now, the small fleet size and concentration only with Russian operators limits resale and leasing appeal. That's the commercial reality today. The program's reputation was also dented by high-profile accidents. The SJ100 has been involved in 3 fatal accidents, killing 89 people. Most notable was the 2012 Mount Salak crash, which was a demonstration flight in which all 37 passengers and 8 crew members on board were killed. There are also long-standing operator complaints about spares and maintenance support. Those issues reduce the overseas sales and left the type, the SJ100, with a limited international footprint. The MOU now with Russia's UAC and HAL aims to give India the option to produce a ready regional jet for a large domestic short-haul market. For example, routes under the UDAN regional connectivity scheme. The argument in favor is simple: quicker access to an off-the-shelf regional aircraft, potential jobs, technology transfer, and new MRO capacity. Now, HAL's experience with licensed production of Russian military types also strengthens the industrial case here for HAL. On the flip side, however, the SJ100's small global fleet, past reliability issues and after-sales issues, and the post-2022 Russification of components raise questions about certification, part supply, and export markets. Because pre-2021, the Superjet was built with many Western components, including the engine. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, those Western companies terminated the contract. Russian industry announced an accelerated import substitution program to replace the Western systems. And March 17, 2025 was the maiden flight of an SJ100 fitted with the new Russian engine. So to conclude, we don't know if HAL has any confirmed orders from any airlines to buy this jet, the SJ100. Which variant of SJ100 will HAL build? That is also a question. The original with the Western components or the one with the Russian engines? And how HAL plans the global certification given the company, the UAC, under Western sanctions? That also is a major question.
All right. Thank you, Madiha, for that comprehensive explanation. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching.